You are listening to the Taps and Teas Show, weekly conversations for people passionate about marketing, golf, and craft beer. Marty is the co-founder of Bad Rhino, an award-winning digital marketing agency helping golf and craft beer brands get real results in social media marketing. Here is your host, Marty McDonald.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Taps and Teas. And like I said in these previous couple episodes here, I've been bringing on experts in craft beer as well as marketing experts. And today is no different. We have a good guest today and somebody that I've met actual beer events, and they were educational events, not just us drinking, which we do occasionally at those events, as you know. And I think it's important, when you hear all the other stuff that I've been putting out for the past few years from an agency perspective, to also take a look at your entire business. I think, and I know when you're looking at it, whether you're just starting out or you're 10 years in or you're a very experienced veteran in the craft beer and brewing, the interesting part about it is you forget some of the basics of business. And Kyle here is somebody that has demonstrated that, and I've seen him speak, and I've also heard him speak just in smaller groups, and he does really well with his clients. What he is? Well, he's a great guy, first and foremost, but he also works with a ton of brewers in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, DC, New Jersey, New York, West Virginia, and a ton of other places, consulting as well as writing out your plan and making sure that you have the right quote and you have the right coverage in your business, which is super important. So whether you're a brewery, that you have a brew pub maybe, or you might be making cider, or you might be going into hard seltzer, you might have a mobile canning, a bottle shop, bar, tavern, restaurant, you get the picture. You need the proper insurance. And Kyle is a member of many of the groups that I belong to locally, and I know he's all over the place visiting brewers and not only knows the brewing industry, but knows how to make sure to protect your business, which I think is super important now and in the future. And if you haven't sat down with somebody, I highly recommend sitting down with somebody that knows the industry. It's super important. I know your cousin might do your insurance. I know, you might have an old friend that can write insurance, but they need to understand the nuances. And that's why I'm bringing Kyle on today. So Kyle, are you there?
You know it, Marty. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more than my big intro there?
That was quite the intro. Yeah, so I had, out of college, I started in the financial services world, and I graduated on a Saturday, and then Monday I went to work. And I was in that industry, variable annuities, mutual funds. I did that for 7 years, and I realized I was not passionate about it. So I realized that what I was passionate about was, sitting down with individuals and businesses and, again, just meeting with people instead of being stuck in an office. And that's really where, I actually get the opportunity to, I think, separate myself. But at that point, I quit my job. I had a wife. I had a daughter at home. My wife was taking care of the daughter. We had 2 cars and a house. And, I quit. And I decided that I was going to be an insurance agent, and that was kind of it at that point. And it really, it took 2 years to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I started reading a lot, learning a lot, and really just kind of becoming a little more self-aware. And from there, I decided I was going to start focusing on breweries, craft beverage. I do have a marketing background, so I kind of keep my ear to the streets, and I had saw, the laws loosening. I had seen the opportunity for a potential boom of beverages. And so I kind of went that route, and I called my underwriter and said, hey, what if I start doing this? And they said, let's try it. And now I insure over 150 breweries, distilleries, cideries, and really just, craft beverage companies in the United States.
That's awesome. I think when we first met and talking about it, your passion kind of comes through that. Not kind of, it does. And I think it's, important when you look at craft beer and craft beverage industry and everything that's changed over the past 6 years, what's the one thing, if somebody's sitting here listening to it and going, oh man, I'm a little nervous, I never really did look at my insurance. How do you start that conversation, and what's your process to make sure they're insured properly?
Well, what I like to do, first of all, really, get a feel for them. Where do they want to be? So a lot of times I try to interview potential clients, and are you a good fit for me? Am I a good fit for you? and let me see your business plan. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Because there are some folks out there who say, hey, I just want to brew beer. I want to make beer and make enough of it just where, I get to drink beer for free and we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not really somebody where I can, sit down and make a difference for. So really, let's take a look at your outlook, where you want to be, what do you want to do? And then I have those, experiences at this point. Hey, you want to cross state lines. Hey, you want a 30,000 square foot space. Now you're brewing 7 days a week, 3 times a day. That's really where we start to dig into that manufacturing risk. And that is where we can kind of put some parameters in place that are just more than, what your lease may outline. There's a lot of times where I get a brewery that's going to open and say, hey, well, my lease says I need general liability insurance. That's all I need. And I said, really? That's all you need? So we kind of, we'll back into it from there. I like to find out what their biggest fear is and,
Sure.
Try to attack those needs and really protect that peace of mind for them.
What's the biggest mistake that you see in craft breweries that are starting up in terms of insurance?
Going for the cheapest price possible. Also, trying to do a lot of the paperwork themselves from a legal standpoint. You wouldn't call a roofer to fix your plumbing.
Right.
So, this situation with, specializing in a niche, and I spoke to, it was about 200 folks. I got picked and I spoke down in New Orleans a few years back, and it was about, it was a niche master event. And from that, I had, it just kind of came out of my mouth and it's kind of been quoted, but you don't know what you don't know. So when you're working with insurance agents that don't go to breweries, don't make beer, never worked for a brewery, I've worked for breweries. I've spent my life in restaurant business. They don't know what exposures are out there. They don't know the type of people that work there and why they work there. So you really got to take a 360-degree approach to it. But again, to your point as to what is the biggest mistake, it's going for the cheapest policy. And I will tell you that, when it comes to insurance, typically, say the cheaper your policy, well, that means that you've removed coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've created coverage gaps. And that tends to be, a big problem. And same thing with the attorney, right? They try to do their paperwork themselves with somebody who doesn't do it. And then, they say, I literally just had this conversation the other day and they said, well, I wish I went with this guy from the start because I wasted about $2,000 and then had to start over, so do it right from the start. Find somebody who's passionate, find somebody who specializes and, just do it right. You can't build a, 50,000 square foot building on a 500 square foot foundation.
Right. No, that's really good advice. I mean, I remember, my dad, when I was just out of college and I was getting my own insurance for the first time. And he's like, you can just figure it out. And I was like, okay. And, your natural inclination is to go with, I got something that was a good price, right? And then my dad looked at the policy and he's like, this isn't going to work for you. He's like, well, it works technically, legally. He's like, you're covered. He's like, but where you drive, he's like, and for the car you're driving, you have to worry about hitting, $90,000 Mercedes more so than them hitting your 1998 Ford Contour, and then he's like,
absolutely.
So like the way this is written, he's like, yeah, this protects. He's like, but someone, this could really impact you. And he explained to me and I was like, oh, and when you're first starting out, I was like, oh, well, that's an extra $50 a month. You can go with this or you can go with that. And he's like, you want to spend the extra $50 a month. And insurance is that thing, I've learned in business and then personally, he's like, for me, you don't worry about it until you need it. And when you need it, you're going to thank your lucky stars that you bought the right policy. And I never made an insurance claim up until last year and I had a fire. And it wasn't in my place, but it was in the place next door and I had a ton of smoke damage. And I was so glad that I had the really good insurance because it was an easier process and they made it, go really quick where other people in that building had some issues. And, it was a really like a big life lesson and it made me evaluate everything and kind of switching up everything and making sure that it was 100% covered. So when you're looking at that and say you're an established brewery, what do they come to you with? Are they just looking to save money or are they looking to change things? Like, what's that conversation like?
We'll take a look at more risk management techniques. We're trying to find out where some of their issues have been and what, sometimes you have situations that are repetitive and they start to drive up your insurance. Certain claims you might have, repetitive workers' compensation type claims. What I found, we have a little tool that'll analyze, what days of the week your claims happen on, why they happen. Is it a back strain? Is it a cut? So we find that, a lot of restaurants end up continuing to cut their fingers. So they stop wearing their gloves or start wearing their gloves. There's different things you can do. You'll find that, maybe sometimes with a grocery store that, I work with a number of those. And regarding, say, claim scenarios, we have found that, some of the folks I work with, a lot of their claims happen on Fridays. And it's oftentimes a hurt foot or shoulder or arm or laceration. And it turns out that when we sit down with those companies and say, oh, well, Fridays are the days that our managers are, the one manager that's his off day. Oh, maybe we should move his off day to Monday so that we can reduce these Friday claims. Because when you have these claims, especially on the workers' compensation side, they stick with you for 3-4 years and they really, they drastically affect your insurance premium. And then the other side of it is, again, just risk management, risk mitigation. And we have some tools in-house that allow us to really analyze these. And we have some partnerships with insurance companies that, because we specialize in a niche, we get some priority. We get some other things here and there, just in terms of, maybe some coverage that others can't get, or maybe some coverage that other people don't ask for because they don't specialize in that niche. So again, it's being involved and being in the center of it. That makes all the difference.
Truly does. I mean, when you have that, that's one of the reasons, and one of the reasons everybody listening to this, why I'm bringing people not only in the marketing agency, and that might be a little world, agency world, it might be a little confusing to you, is like, well, why would you bring on people that were competitors or other things to Bad Rhino? And that's not really the case. Is I know, the feedback that I've gotten from doing these podcasts and the people that are listening to them, it's trying to educate a little bit more. And that's why I'm bringing on, an insurance person, because many times when I've been involved in going into a brewery and we start marketing, start to develop that plan, the interesting part that comes out is like, oh, well, I got to review my insurance in 6 months. I got to do this. And it's become something of a neat little symbiotic relationship where you have people that you can refer. But what I find is many times in the business plan, the insurance isn't adequate, marketing isn't adequate. Like I don't know why. It's just those two things seem to be there, and it comes in this conversation every time. And I'm just trying to make sure that when you're listening to this, you're getting good information to make decisions, whether you hire Bad Rhino, whether you hire somebody like Kyle, start to take the time to do that and kind of review some of those things, because everything changes over time. Your insurance policy that was good in 2018 might not be good now that we're in 2020. So Kyle, the other question I have just specifically about how you go through that process with brewers of all sorts and, other beverage makers, like, when somebody sits down and says, tell me everything I need to know, like, what's that like? Like, I think some of the examples that you have, but let's just bring it back just to craft breweries, right? And let's say they want to expand. What are things that they need to think about, not only in their current insurance, but they're going to open another location, they're going to add food, all these things. What should they be thinking about before they talk to somebody like you?
Well, so as they are looking at a new space, it's always very, very important to get, say, your insurance agent involved quickly. I put out a piece that says pretty much if there's a word out there that ends in ing and, you're doing it, you're thinking about it, you're leasing, you're renting, you're moving, call me. Because there's so many times where I find out about things that it's like, hey, we moved over the weekend. I'm like, oh, great, because you didn't tell me that. And your coverage is, providing coverage for your other location. So there are also some things I think that set us apart in that, I write insurance, but my job also is to be a connector. So when you are looking at expansion, right, you should be working with the folks who have done the architect work, done the builds of breweries before. And those are the folks that we connect with. We have essentially like a playbook. You reach out to us, we have consultants, they run their own businesses, but they're all within our circle. Many of them are in the guild, and that's why the guild's so important. But you start to think about, all right, what is that space you're going to do? Will you have a food menu? Maybe currently you're brewing right now in a 7-barrel system, and you are just doing 100% beer, and you don't have a menu. You have food trucks. Now what you're looking at is, all right, we're going to expand. We're going to open up a restaurant. We're going to add food. Well, that changes the dynamic of not only your insurance, but also of like your clientele and who's going to come. So it kind of depends on, what you want. Why are you moving? I think a lot of things always come back to your why. But again, get us involved as soon as possible, because, you may not want to call your insurance agent. I know we're not the most fun, but we may know somebody who would be important for you to speak to before you actually make that move. So again, just try to be a resource there.
That's huge. And I think you spell it out really well of thinking of those things. That's why I asked you that question, because you covered a lot of those things earlier. You talk about like a startup brewery and thinking about business plan and where you want to go and what you want to do. And then, when you think about expansion, sometimes you wait for that insurance after that. Like, hey, we just signed a lease. We just did this. We just ordered our restaurant equipment. We just, and then it's like, oh, and then we should probably call the insurance. And I think in my 20 years in running companies or startups and being involved in one way, shape, or form, I do think there's a couple of people on your team that you should call first. One of them is absolutely, in addition to however you're financing it, another one of those ING words, how you're insuring it is key, because that could affect how you finance it. It could affect so many other things of your insurance costs. So you want to make sure you get those things pulled in. And I think you have a great way of kind of spelling that out. Plus, the industry. And
so let me pop in real quick. So something I didn't even talk about. So, all right, hey, we're gonna go get this new location. All right, and we already signed a lease. Well, maybe this lease has a requirement for you to have a $10 million umbrella. Well, now that essentially is going to mean you're going to pay an extra $10,000 a year. If we take, an average umbrella is roughly about $1,000 per million. And that's on top of your existing policy. So what are the limits that the landlord is saying that they're requiring? We negotiate some of those in or out, up or down. There's language in a lease that says you're responsible for any and all blah, blah, blah. There's no insurance policy and there's no agreement out there that insures any and all. There's always an exclusion. There's always some caveat. So we try to, negotiate that wording out or change it. Also, hey, you're going to go put your brewery on the beach. Well, guess what? A lot of insurance companies don't like anything on the beach. So you may no longer fit with your insurance carrier. You may want to start doing distilling spirits at your new location and brewing beer. Well, guess what? Not every insurance company likes distilling. So you may no longer fit, or you may outgrow your existing policy. And that's why it's very important. You'd rather get ahead of that than find out after you've already made that move or signed that lease.
Absolutely.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on the show and want more, head on over to tapsandteas.info and get our free report with game-changing tips and strategies straight to your inbox. Just enter your info and stop being stuck with no marketing plan.
So we're recording this right now. It's the end of April in 2020. We're in quarantine, or some version of quarantine, depending on what part of the country you're in. And I've absolutely seen a huge impact in our craft brewery clients and restaurants and golf courses that we work with in terms of their marketing and making a shift and getting ready for whatever that new normal is. Kyle, what have you been seeing, and what are you doing personally in your own business to kind of meet the needs of those folks that you serve?
What I'm doing, honestly, is being available as much as I can. I put in bragging. I haven't done this in a long time just because I make sure I spend time with my family. But last night, my kids went to bed, and I worked from 9 to midnight. And, when I was first trying to get into the industry and trying to make it happen, that's what I would do. I mean, I was putting in 16, 17 hours a day. So this, coronavirus situation, now is a time to be available more than ever. And, with that, my emails backed up, my voicemails are backed up. But for me to hunker down on my desk last night and really sit down and dig into my email and everything else that's upcoming and changes to people's businesses, the best thing that I can do right now is be proactive and be available. We're seeing changes in business, a lot of to-go models. People are, they were bartending and now they're delivering beer. Making sure that we have certain coverages here for the folks who are delivering. There's billing changes. Bills are on hold. Not everybody knows that. So, if I can, hold your bill for a month or 30 days, 60 days, and maybe that helps you with cash flow or paying your payroll. That's what I'm trying to do. We have the distilleries are now doing hand sanitizer. That's a different business model. The insurance companies that insure distilleries were not in the market to do medical products. Now they are for the time being. And I had to get some, I had to kind of beg for some allowances on that. So it's times are changing. It's happening fast. And like I said, the thing that I can do here is be proactive and available. That's what I've been trying to do my best at.
No, that's awesome. I think that's the best way you can do. And since you brought it up, I think it's valuable to the people that listen to this. So let's say, you're sitting there and you switch to a to-go model and you're going to be doing takeout and you're planning it or you're already doing it. And you do have that, tap room person that was a bartender maybe, and now they're doing other things. Is there things from an insurance perspective that an owner should be looking at or changing?
Yeah. So for some of the folks that, started doing this, we said, hey, we need to know who's driving, right? We want to make sure that they have a good driving record. You need to look that up. We need to have their license on file. You should have a best practices template for delivery drivers. So putting some parameters in place. I mean, maybe they're not perfect and it doesn't have to be a 30-page document, but, have a team meeting, sit down, maybe the owner or one of the higher ups there, somebody who has longevity, maybe they're the driver for the first few days and they have somebody tag along with them. Get to know the routes, get to know how you want your business viewed, right? Because, now this person, obviously a bartender is pretty personable, but when you are not behind the bar and now you're out in public, you're still representing your brewery or your distillery that you're working for. So, have that conversation with your employees. Sit down and say, hey, here's what's happening. We want to keep you on. We're going to give you a different role. Things are going to be different, but here's how we want you to handle it. And I think, first and foremost, just having that communication with your employees. And again, just making sure that they carry themselves, the right way. I mean, really what they're essentially doing is bringing smiles to people's doorsteps, which is fantastic and it's cool. And it's been great to have products show up on my front porch,
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to see the employees and it's fun and it's nice. And it's, now they're out there in their brewery or distillery shirt and it's more marketing for them. So as long as you're carrying yourself well and you're doing things the right way, you're being safe about it, have at it, but have that conversation with your folks and have some sort of guidelines.
No, I think that's good advice. How do you think this whole thing is going to impact the craft brewing industry or the beverage industry on a whole?
It's interesting. Georgia just opened up their borders, or not the borders, but Georgia just opened up their restaurants and bars and their businesses again. So I'm interested to see. I think Waffle House opened 400 locations back up. So with that, every third booth was open. There's plexiglass, every third booth, or surrounding you to stop the spread of germs. The folks were saying that a typical restaurant bar has it's a seating for 20, 30 at the bar. It's 30 feet long essentially. And now you're going to have to be 8 to 10 feet apart. So where you would have 20 people, 30 people at your bar, now you might have 4 to 6. So you're going to have to get used to, I guess running at a fifth of capacity maybe. Again, this has just created some opportunities. The folks at Beer Me have, the folks at True Respite Brewing have created Beer Me, which is a platform. It's kind of like Amazon for beer. Now everybody can type in their address and see what beer is available, find some new breweries and distilleries, cider that they never had before and order it. So it's sparking creativity, but I am curious to see, where sales will end up. Will people start going right back out? People be hesitant, or, like me, I'm like, as much as I love sitting down in a bar, at a brewery, seeing the stainless and having a beer with a friend, like it's pretty sweet having beer delivered to my doorstep, So I don't know. It's going to be different. The landlord isn't really going to reduce his rent. You might have some, I don't know how long the extensions say on paying back loans is going to be, but there's ultimately going to be less income coming into the business. So they'll have to run leaner, more efficiently, and just adapt and change and do something new. But thank goodness for cans, transportation and delivery. So we'll see what stays. And again, some of these laws were loosened during this time. Mm-hmm. We'll see if they go back to where they were.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody knows. It's just interesting to talk about and chat about these things to kind of get ideas and concepts out there. I mean, I think there's going to be innovation born out of this, right? And I do think, the challenges are like you said, you have beer delivered to your home. I've actually been drinking way less beer since this whole thing started because I'm more of a social guy. Like I want to go and hang out and have beers with my friends or go to a brewery and experience and meet new people and things like that. So that definitely has impacted that, obviously. And I think it will get back to that at some point, but there's going to be a weird change. That's the only way I can describe it, is weird, because who knows, is there going to be a vaccine and you're going to have to get tested when you walk into places, or you're going to have to get tested and carry something. And there's a lot of things that will change people's habits because they won't want to get tested and they don't want to give up some privacy as well. And I think that's always fascinating to see those dynamics. And tap rooms, bars, pubs have always been a place where people would share ideas and get together. And that's deeply rooted in Western society and around the world, but it's deeply rooted in the US. So I'm interested to see how that's going to change and how that's going to impact the whole thing. And unfortunately, I think you're going to see, some massive changes in craft beer, especially, where they're going to have to not only change the model, but they're also going to have to reconsider about how they are putting out their product, how they're pricing it, and things like that. And the unfortunate part of it is there, could be breweries going out of business, which I would hate to see, but it's the reality of it. But as you said, nobody knows, and who knows? We're sitting here right at the tail end of April. This could all change in a week, in our day, and hopefully for the positive, and we'll just keep pushing on that way. So segueing out of all the serious and fun stuff, or into some fun stuff rather, where's the best place you've traveled, either around the world or just in the US?
Well, I would say that, my wife's family's from Chicago. Chicago is a fantastic place, and I'd never gone there, and now I've been there, I don't know, more than I can count on my two hands, and that's definitely a favorite place. I have had that opportunity with being in the beer business to travel to New Orleans and speak. Had a blast there. That was fantastic. I actually ran into some friends that were down there at a bachelor party. We hung out with them. It was fun. Then my wife and I got to go to CBC. We went to Nashville. So those, Chicago, Nashville, New Orleans, I would say, are definitely tops right now. We have a trip planned at the end of July for Ireland, and I don't know if that's happening or not. But fingers crossed, we'll see. But I was hoping that was going to be my next favorite spot. So, but ultimately, man, I like to be local. I like to be at a brewery. I like the vibe. I like to have a beer fresh out of the tank, and doesn't really matter where it is.
Yeah, that is definitely an experience. So very few times that I have non-brewers on this podcast that somebody probably has been to either more breweries or at least as many breweries as I have, which is quite extensive. And so I'm interested to hear this answer. So I'm going to actually ask this in two parts. Usually I ask it only in one. What's been the best beer you ever had from a craft brewery? And if you don't want to name it because you don't want to insult a client or whatever, I'm cool with that. But I think you'll tell me. Then the second thing is what's the best one that you've had in PA, or multiple ones that you had in PA?
Honestly, I think I'm trying to pinpoint my favorite beer or the best beer I ever had, but I would say that the best beer I probably ever had has come out of Pennsylvania. And I think Pennsylvania we are very spoiled. We have some kick-ass breweries with some kick-ass beer. We just, 6 feet of beer challenge, a 6-foot beer challenge.
I saw that on your Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, so there are 2 beers on there that do stand out to me that are kind of near and dear to my heart, and Carton Brewing in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. They put out their cream ale. It's a 12%. It's an Imperial cream ale, which is crazy. Most cream ales are, 5%, right, in Genesee. This is a 12%. And they do some weird stuff very well. And that beer is the Cafe Ichiro. So it is a coffee style. It's a light colored beer. It's a light colored cream ale, but it has a coffee flavor. They do this regular coffee. It's their normal deal. It's if you go to New Jersey and you get a coffee, if you ask for a regular coffee, I think you get 2 sugars, 2 creams in it, something like that. cream and sugar automatically comes in a regular coffee. So they make that beer, and that's exactly what it tastes like. Then they do a variant of it, and this is this cafe y churro, so coffee and cinnamon and sugar. And it is a 12% beer. It's killer, and that beer is always good. Even I have some that I've had a year, and they're awesome. That beer, and then Truly, East Branch Brewing down the street here in Downingtown.
Yeah,
I think Alluvium is one of the best beers I've ever had. That beer, if you closed your eyes, you'd pretty much say it was, I think, Heady Topper. But when you have it in a glass, I don't think Heady Topper's the greatest beer anymore. I actually I think like Vocal Banger's better than that. And
me too.
But this beer that they've created, Alluvium, is I don't know, it's dank. It's like East Coast and West Coast put together, and it's clear. So it's not the hazy stuff. That's just a well-made beer from a technical, stylistic standpoint. Those two stand out. Those two I could drink any day. Death by Coconut, Oscar Blues is awesome. I mean, there's some wacky stuff out there that I've had. The Brew Gentleman, no doubt. I have 3 Brew Gentleman kegs for my birthday. Everything they do is fantastic. Dancing Gnomes right out there with them. That's, when you go east, I have no problem driving to Pittsburgh to go get a crowler. Like Pennsylvania kicks ass with beer. Philadelphia area, Lehigh Valley, and the Pittsburgh area is just crushing it. And obviously the center part of the state. I mean, you can go anywhere in Pennsylvania and get a fantastic beer. So
that is true.
We're truly spoiled.
Yeah, I've been all over PA like you, and I will definitely give the nod to 2 that you brought up. I mean, Alluvium is one of those beers. I remember the first time I went in there, and I was just like, yeah, I'll have this. And then I'm like, I'm going to have one more. And then I think I bought whatever they had it to take away. I bought whatever they had there. And I remember that one was that was impressionable. I think is the best word to say. And Brew Gentleman would be the other one, and I'm not slighting anybody else, but I do think what you mentioned at the end, or, at some point in there, was like when you get into the hazy part. And to me, many of them, not all of them, they start to taste the same, or they have a flavor profile that is too similar to so many other things. So when if you're local and you have your one favorite brewery, I think it's, it has that audience. I think for your more, whatever you want to name it, people that have had multiple beers from multiple breweries all over the country, I've had one hazy here and I'm like, okay, it's good. Then have another one. I'm like, that tastes pretty similar to whatever. And then you have another one. It's like, that tastes very similar to this or that. But I think that the reason Alluvium stands out so well to me is that, and you put it perfectly, it's like this combination to a West Coast and a East Coast type beer, whatever that means to you, because that means different things to other people. But it's nice, clear, crisp. And you're like, you walk away, you're like, man, that was tasty. And it meets all the parameters. It's when
even when you crack the can, you smell it, you're like, holy shit, that smells awesome. I want to drink all of that.
Yeah, it's a unique dynamic in there. And then Brew Gentleman, if you listen to this and you make a trip and you're in Pittsburgh, or I will even tell you if you're an hour away, or if you're 2 hours away, not to make this into a Brew Gentleman commercial, but I highly recommend that place. I can't recommend it enough. It's not only a cool little spot, they're growing, but they have very interesting beers that are very, very well thought out, put together, and they taste great.
And that shows in their tap room and their colors and their marketing.
Yeah. And the presentation and everything about it.
The bartenders wear ties. I mean, come on.
I know. It's a really cool atmosphere. I think I've seen this before in your profile, and we've known each other for a few years. Do you play golf regularly, or how often?
Yeah, you know what? I try to play as much as I can. Last year, I took a step back and I did a lot more fishing. Got into fly fishing. I grew up fishing. But, yeah, man, I golf. I'm actually wearing a Abandoned Dunes zip up right now, which is a golf course that I hope to play at one day. I know a guy who brought me this back. But, that's a place where it's 6 courses in Oregon, and you got to book your tee time a year in advance. Like, come on. So
I've had dinner there. Yeah, when I visited a great friend of mine out in Oregon, and haven't played it yet, but it's on my list. I think next time I go out west, I'm going to try and book it and spend a solid week out there. It's a cool place, very cool, and I can't wait to play it.
Yeah. So I played in a league for a number of years. That's Tuesday nights at 9 holes. So that was a nice thing that like forced me to play.
Sure. Once you can get on the schedule, it's always a good thing.
Yeah, or else you won't do it, right? What gets scheduled gets done. So, in that regard, I got down to 21 handicap. I'm probably sitting at about 23 right now.
Yep. Yeah, whenever you know your handicap, that's always good. Mine is actually just my swing in general. I have to play more. I used to play a ton when I was younger, and I only get out. Last 2 years, I've only gotten out maybe a dozen times each year, which is nothing to kind of like, it's just like I get out there, then you get angry with yourself a little bit, and then you just got to remember, like, you got to play more if you're really going to play well. And,
you can't expect a lot. It's funny. That first round of the season, I tend to play pretty damn well because I have no.
That's because you forgot all your bad habits.
You have no expectation. It's not like
that too.
I played really good on Thursday. I played well, and then like, all right, so Saturday I'm going to go out and play again, and I should play well. And then you get the first, second, third team. You're like, shit, what happened? So yeah, when you start to set expectations, I think your ego gets involved, and you can screw up your day.
Absolutely. Kyle, really appreciate you having on. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Oh man, all over. So if I can give a quick shout, I did just start up that the Beer Mighty Things podcast. Had Marty on, and we're doing all things craft beverage there. Again, just trying to give those folks and give those resources, to spoke out from the middle, say myself, but also the resources around us, and connect everybody. You can find me at craftbreweryinsurance.com. There's also a number of other URLs that point, and I kind of made it, instead of just brewing, but craft BVGINS. So, craftbeverageinsurance.com. I made that shorter. I'm out there on, you can find me on Facebook and all that, Twitter. But yeah, Craft Beverage Insurance or Craft Brewing Insurance is the spot. Hit me up, Kyle at craftbrewinginsurance.com. I'm here.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate it. Can't wait to have a beer with you again in person. And, everybody, like I said, I'm bringing everybody on these podcasts and these interviews just to give some information. I know it kind of gets meaty at times, but I think it's important to know good people in whatever industry you're in. And Kyle is definitely one of those people. So I appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next episode.
All right, buddy. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kyle.
This is the podcastfactory.com.